Welcome to the Family Pictures Podcast. I am Michael Branson Smith here with
Jim Groom.
Groom.
You know, my other podcasting partner, Mike Caulfield, says that you have dulcet tones and you're far more nice and pleasurable to listen to than me. You like that, huh? You're laughing.
No, you know what's funny is like, no worries, whatever the voice is, if you like the podcast, you just kind of adopt that person, regardless of their tones. There's a podcast. I mean, I'm a nerd at heart and I listen to a lot of Magic the Gathering content. And there's this guy who lives actually in upstate New York near me. His name's Seth, and he has a very, very pitched voice. And when my wife first heard it, she'd be like, "Oh my God, what the hell is that crap you're listening to? How can you listen to him talk? It's so annoying." But your affection for him and his personality, his takes are so great that you just get over it. So Jim, there's hope for you. If people love you, regardless of what you sound like, they just adopt you and you're in complete personality.
I see how this is. So I have a high-pitched, nasally, annoying New York voice? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
I don't know what you mean.
Actually, you know what? It's also, I have like a proper microphone that's doing a lot of work for me. That makes me
shit. Now you're talking. You went from a personal attack to an attack on my equipment. That's so fucked up.
I'm just suggesting if you had this other microphone that does work for you, it would help.
I have a fucking
well.
$200 mic that's hanging on a little contraption here. What do I got to do here? I got to spend thousands of dollars so that people will like how I sound. Well, fuck them. I don't care if they like. I don't like how they sound. Their silence is killing me.
Well, let's get past that and work into some nice, gentle memories of family in our 73rd podcast, our fourth in the international 1990s film series. This is our fifth, right? Because we're cranking through 6 films for this series. Actually, you're right.
Oh my God. And let's go through them. We've covered Muriel's Wedding, Life is Sweet, The White Balloon, Raise the Red Lantern, and now
Central Station, the 1998 Brazilian film by Walter Salles, I think is the better way to. Yeah, this is the thing, Jim. You have to remember, you're like Portuguese and Spanish. E's are pronounced as hard A's, and I's are pronounced as hard E's, and then we'll maybe get through a lot of these names.
So now you give me a fucking pronunciation test?
No.
Is that it on top of everything else? I'm getting that from my kids right now because I got to take an Italian test for residency. And I spent my
really?
with my kids, and they were tearing my Italian apart. I was like, I'm done. I was like leaving the breakfast table in a huff. They were attacking me. It was terrible. They're like,
what's that? What do you mess up? What are you messing up the worst in their eyes?
It's always where I stress the vowel. Like we stress the vowel in English very early and they stress it later. And so it creates all sorts of problems with my pronunciation on top of my conjugation of verbs and,
and your nasally high-pitched voice.
You are cackling. You're having such a good idea. Good fun.
You brought this up, not me.
I didn't bring it up.
Yes, your podcast partner indicted your speaking.
Indicted me by complimenting you. Anyway, so I don't need a lecture on pronunciation. My pronunciation will be terrible, as will my voice, and I'm happy about it.
Okay, well, this is a road trip film in the vein of, actually, we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the vein of Paper Moon, which actually was from 25 years earlier, and it's really interesting. There's no mention of the comparables of these two, but we'll talk about that later. But you did a lot of production research, some background research for this. Why don't you walk us through this film's story a bit?
Good. And I'm going to tell people, I'll give you a little bit, the people out there, a little insight to my process. Because I know you're all like, how does Jim Groom do what he does? And now I'm going to tell you. See, I wait for a movie that my wife will really like. Central Station was one of them. We loved it. We watched it last night, and it was just a masterpiece. So, no matter what we say, go out and watch it. If you've missed this as part of the
Mm.
'90s indie kind of renaissance, this one is up there with the best. So we both fell in love with it. And then I wake up early and we have coffee, and I say, "What do we know about this director?" And she goes online and she researches. And then she says, one of the things she tells me is she's like, "This guy, Walter Salas, is like the third richest filmmaker in the world." And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what? Really? And then I'm like, he's
Yeah.
only made X. I'm like, and turns out, unlike Lucas and Spielberg, who seem to have made that money because they made successful films that are like whatever, but he made his 4 point whatever billion dollars because he was then heir to Unibanco. So if you know Central Station at all, and if you don't, it deals with a very kind of lower class like society in Brazil. And it's very hard to reconcile that being made by a multi-billionaire director. Like it seems there's something incongruent about it, but I think actually through this conversation, we'll say that maybe that's not the case. Anyway, he went to USC Film School, just like Lucas and Spielberg. Um, and he made a whole bunch of documentaries in the beginning of his career, and then switched to fiction films. And I think this was his second fiction film or his first, but I think it was his
His
second.
third. I think it's just. Oh yeah, actually, I don't know that. I know it's his third film. I didn't look closely at whether
I'm
the
not
first
sure
two.
either, and I
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to.
And it's funny.
It's
His
early.
family. It's family. He has three brothers, and two of them stayed bankers, and another one also became a filmmaker. He was a documentary filmmaker, and it's really funny. Like it is kind of terrifying, like because of these stupid indexes of like wealth. All four of them are in the top 1,000 most richest people on the fucking planet. Like, that's crazy,
and
you know?
and it begs part of I think his vision of Brazil, which is super compelling. So we can talk about
Yeah,
that when we talk about the film. But
yeah.
another thing that I found out via Antonella, who did all the research for me. So if it's not you, Michael, it's her. She was like, "Yeah, did you know that there was this whole Brazilian, what they call the retomada or the rebirth?" And I guess it turns out that the film industry like just about collapsed in the '90s because the president Fernando Collor de Mello eliminated all funding for film, and Brazilian film production basically disappeared. And it
Mm.
was towards the end of the '90s, as Collor was impeached, that the film production started to come back into the country. And this is one of the first films of what we'd call the rebirth or the retomada. And
Mm.
it's really cool to think of this film as the beginning of a rebirth of Brazilian cinema, which is something I knew nothing about. And that was super cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to think about, like, that the 90s were a renaissance of independent cinema
Totally.
worldwide, you know, because the same thing has happened with Zhao Jimu and Raise the Red Lantern, right? Ultimately,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, and he's quote unquote the fifth generation of Chinese film, but he's also this first generation out of the Cultural Revolution, like a really politically, you know, fraught time. And out of it comes these new voices, right? You
And you
know?
said it before we jumped on this podcast. It's like this has been probably one of the most, you know, interesting and compelling series we've done because we're
Mm.
completely out of our comfort zone. I'm seeing
Yeah.
films I've never seen. I'm learning
Yeah.
shit I did not know. And it's just super fun to see the '90s.
Yeah.
And I have that same insight.
Yeah.
It probably didn't sound as good coming out of my voice, so people would get it. But I had that same insight that wow, the '90s was not just about Tarantino making Reservoir Dogs, which I'm glad he
Right.
did, but it was a broader vision of the independent or the birth of cinema in a new way worldwide,
Mm.
which is so cool.
It really, really is. Yeah. I think I don't know how that escapes the kind of, I mean, I guess we're fucking Americans and we always think of ourselves and our perspective on things. And very much this film, in a interesting way, falls into that frame. Like this, not unlike Raise the Red Lantern, which was from 95, I think. This becomes like a phenomena of a film that internationally is recognized.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have It's nominated for a Best Foreign Language Film, as well as for the Academy Award, as well as Fernanda Montenegro, who's like kind of the grande dame of Brazilian theater and cinema and television. She does tons of telenovelas in the 70s and 80s, and she finds her way into cinema and becomes like a star out of this film from an international perspective. And this is like, half-assed internet research, if you will, but it's like on her Wikipedia page, she even mentions the notion, there's quotes from her. It's like, in Brazil, I have a career. In America, I have an accent. So there is this exoticization, or whatever that word is. She's exotic to Americans in this regard. And she loses, as you mentioned, to Gwyneth Paltrow for that
Which
piece
is
of crap of a film.
greatest insult in
I
all. I mean,
know.
there's so many insults in the Academy, but this woman losing to Gwyneth Paltrow,
I
goop
know.
Gwyneth Paltrow, is such a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
it's
she has the hardest working eyes I've ever seen. I
yeah.
love her eyes. What she does with them in this film, she's just amazing.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's really a struggle because you don't know the language, so you're constantly reading subtitles, but it's
Yeah,
so terrible because you just want to focus on the image and her, especially, and her engagement with Vinicius de Olivier, who plays the boy, uh Josué, which is you did the research, and he's basically a found actor, right? He was a shoe shine boy at the airport who was one of 1,500 boys that auditioned for the part and stole it, which is amazing.
it is
Yeah,
amazing. I mean, just think about that. 1,500 boys go in, and one comes out, right? It's some
I
kind of like
know.
gladiator for this movie. But he was great. And the fact that he was, and that was City of God, right? City of God, from what I read, because I've never seen it, but I read around it because of this movie. It's like they were all basically street folks who,
Right. Hmm.
and it's an interesting thing in terms of Salas's vision, right? Like he is comes out of documentary film, he develops the screenplay, and he really wants this to be a road movie, and also being filmed like you love more than
Yep.
anything
Hmm.
in situo, right? In the
Yeah.
central station, on the road, in and the film benefits from it. It's just so beautiful as a result.
Yeah.
It's like a travel log of Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also one of my most favorite things, besides the like, let's go into a world and just be in it and not construct it. It's also outdoors. It's like the Western, right? It's
Yeah,
just,
totally.
you just use the light that exists around you. And there's these wonderful moments, even later in the film, where, you know, they're in the dark spaces of these homes that don't have electricity. And so we're just like, it's the light of a candle that's illuminating, Dora, the character played by Fernanda Montenegro. And naturalistically, it's a remarkably visual film in that regard. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think the thing he says, and it's one of the things he's been talking about, and we'll come back to something I think I might contribute later on, is Salas is noting that he wanted to portray Brazil um, something outside of what the mainstream media presents. It's always this
Mm.
horrific image of Brazil, and they talk about the street kids, and they talk about the violence, and the disparity in wealth, and all those things may be true. But he wanted to talk about the ordinary people who live there and the vast space within which they live and the vast distinction and diversity of who lives there. And I think the movie kind of starts with like, oh no, we're going down that road of like, the abject nature of that. But then it just blows up
Yeah.
and they get on the road and it's just like Brazil is laid at your feet. And my contention is that Brazil is as great a character in this film as anyone else. And
Yeah.
I love that about it.
Yeah, I love that you added that, and we're definitely going to talk about it. But let's start where the phenomena that is very real of where so Fernanda Montenegro plays Isadora Teixeira, but is just called Dora throughout the film, and she has a job. And what's her job? Which is exists in real life at this time in 1998.
Oh, she's a letter writer. And
Yeah,
what a great way to open a film. They
yeah,
open the film and, someone's dictating something and you don't see her on the other side and they're just talking at the camera and talking this story. And
yeah,
then slowly you begin to realize after this happens several times through several stories that she's writing letters. And
Right.
according to the research, like this was really a job before the internet and in the 80s and 90s, or even earlier, when a mass part of the population, I don't know mass, I don't know how many, but there was still a significant amount of illiteracy. And
Mm.
so you would have this need for letter writers in order for folks who couldn't write and read to communicate with others. And that becomes a big part of this story too. And it kind of places the story right at the end of the 80s, early 90s. And I think that's important also because of the politics of Brazil there. But yeah, it's a super cool piece. And it's not just a it's I guess the point is it's not just a kind of funny, good conceit. It's a reality of
Yeah.
Central Station in Brazil at that time.
Yeah, and I mean, to give some examples, like it starts right off with a mother saying goodbye to her son going to jail, and you're like, "Who is
Oh
she
my God.
talking to?" You first think like she must be talking to him, but it's in this space where you're like, is he just arrested? Is he in like, in a jumpsuit with cuffs and stuff? But no, she's dictating to Dora, and there's other ones that are some of them are funny because there's it's like a thanks to a former lover and then a hot love letter. And
That's the
then the
best.
addresses are like, do you know the address? And they're like, no, but send it to this town and then say it's the third house to the right of the bakery, like put that
So
on there.
good. Yeah.
And so it's the ordinariness of people's lives that she's like translating to words on paper. And one of the stories turns out to be the story of is the letter that Anna, who is Josué's mother, to her former husband or lover, we don't know, but the father of Josué. And it's really funny because it's like it says, "Dear Jesus, you are the worst thing that happened to me. At least try to show up to meet your son. He's determined that he wants to meet you." And and the idea is like, I'm going to send him on a train. You better be there at the other end of the line.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because so much of this movie also deals with like it could preach to you like in the city is a million stories, everyone has a story,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
it could just show you that. And it could
yeah.
just really, like you said, the movie starts with all these different faces telling all these different stories. And me
Hmm.
and Antonella, like by minute two, were locked into this movie. And
I
it
agree.
after that, like it was really a movie that was premised upon stories of this space and of this world that really just seemed completely new and refreshing and
Hmm.
compelling. And I think he did a really good job of rather than preaching about Brazil and all the stories of the people in Central Station, he just showed you. He just made it part of the story. I love that.
Hmm. And it and it soon becomes this this story of Dora and her perspective on these people in the station and how she in many ways does not respect them. She's because she gets to lord her literacy over them, right? She's like kind of she gets to in a sense mock them, and this is showcased through when she returns to her apartment. She calls down through the window, which is awesome, like to her friend Irene, and they come up and they read the letters together, right? This is you get a sense this is a daily ritual. They're both retired public school teachers, and this is a way of cobbling together extra money in her retirement, Dora, and they're just like withering as they go through these
Oh,
letters.
it's brutal. And
Yeah.
it's one of the real tensions of the early part of this movie. And it kind of lasts throughout, but by the end, it's kind of a lot less than it was. It's like we're focused on this woman. She's our protagonist, and
Hmm.
she's kind of an asshole, right? Like she's like
Oh yeah.
totally scathing about these poor people's plights. She
Hmm.
discounts them. She doesn't even send the letters. Many of them she has
No.
ripped up. It's just
Or they're trapped in the purgatory of the dresser drawer, right?
right, exactly. So right away, your main character, who you know you're going to be following
Hmm.
through the rest of the film, you're kind of like, "What's up?" And it's a
Yeah.
really another cool device that keeps
Yeah.
you on off balance, if you will.
Well, it's the beginning of our. At first, you see her as like very judgmental, ultimately, and she and I read get to make fun of and make decisions about who's worthy of their letter being sent. And an example is like there's a man who's responding to a personal ad who's lying about his height and what he looks like and everything. And Irene's like, oh, send that one off. And she's like, no way, there's five more to five other people, and pretending like he's this person that he's not. And she's like, I'm not going to let that happen, right? Meanwhile, this is a person who's just reaching out to try to make a connection, and it's not like he's this Lothario that's going to pull it off. If he actually gets a response, he will have to meet this other person in real life, and that person will see who he really is. So
Yeah.
who cares in that regard? And this becomes very quickly as like she is this person who uh, does not allow these messages to make it to their destinations unless she deems they're worthy, right? And that's very problematic.
It is problematic. And she plays this. I was always thinking she's playing God. And that
Mm,
is the point at which her playing God comes up against a real life tragedy.
right.
For a letter that she has written more than once now for Joshua. Josh, say it for me.
It's Josué. It's interesting. It's basically the Brazilian Joshua. So it's like
Joshua.
Josué. Yeah, Josué.
Josué. So she's writing for Josué and his mom a second letter because the mom
Hmm.
comes back and is
Yeah,
basically like,
yeah.
no, 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 no. I don't want to actually. Have you sent the letter yet? Which is a joke because she doesn't send any letters. She's like, no, actually, I have it right here. And so she's like, I want to rewrite the letter. And she's like, okay. And so they rewrite the letter. And then this time it's far more soft. It's like,
Yeah.
he wants to go. I want to come with you, with him. I want to see you again. And so, her anger is giving way to her love for this guy. And, we start to see this. And the kid is somehow a little bit pissed off at her. He almost like
No, it's
trust her, right?
he doesn't, because for good reason, because immediately after like she dictates this new letter, she kind of asked Dora for advice. Anna's like, so I really want to see him, should I? And then she mocks her in an awful way and says like, here, well, let's write this letter and say like, I miss you, I need to see you, and you and the thing that's so sad about it is Anna says like, yeah, that's great, that sounds good.
Yeah,
And even
true.
though
Correct.
she's like totally mocking her, and but the thing is, this is very important, is Josue is this very observant kid, and he sees through her lies and the ruse that she's performing in her role as being this sympathetic documentarian that's supposed to be taking these memories and translating them out into this transmitting them out into the world to whether they're loved ones or potential lovers or former lovers. He sees like the letter that she hasn't sent, and he again sees it later on, after which, the MacGuffin of this film is pretty kind of goofy, is that soon after, they give her the new letter to send off, Anna gets run over by a bus. And you're like, fuck. And saving her son from like getting run over in a sense as he's trying to retrieve his toy in the street.
Which he stole from Dora. So it's this stamp
Yeah, oh,
thing.
that's right, right,
Oh,
right. Oh, no,
over.
yeah, no, it's a top. It's a
It's a
top.
top, right? And he goes back
Right.
to get it, and the mother is sitting there, and she's like, "Don't!" And she's sitting in the middle of the crossway, and she's fucking creamed by a bus.
Boom.
And
Yeah.
it's not funny, obviously. It's
Yeah.
tragic, but the movie somehow kind of doesn't focus on the tragedy of it, other than the fact that the kid is now post. He has nowhere to go. He
Right.
doesn't know what happened to his mom. Like, he's just left out.
Mhm.
There's no sense that any authority has come in and dealt with him at all. He's just now like a feral cat in the
Yeah.
central station. And it's really kind of scary.
Yeah, there is no police that show up. There is no, government that, bureaucracy that it does its job, right, in this context.
No.
And he is left alone, and he immediately goes back to Dora and says, I want to send a new letter. And she's like, do you have any money? And he's like, no, but you already wrote one that you hadn't sent already. It's like, so change it. And she's like, no, you don't have any money. So she's a total asshole to him. She doesn't care, you know?
And that was hard for me early in this film, is to
Yeah.
understand her. And you knew there was going to be a change, but the difficulty of her character early on is real. The other piece about Central Station, which is where this film kind of starts, is there is no police force, there is no kind of order outside, but there's an internal order. And that
Mhm.
internal order is truly, truly scary. So
Yeah.
one kid runs through, and there's this whole bunch of like street urchin kind of kids, runs through, steals a Walkman, or what looks like one of those yellow Walkmans. The security guards in Central Station activate. They chase him down to the ends of the track. When they get him, he's like, no, 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 I'll return it. They pull out their guns and they execute him.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, wait, like the movie's tone changes a bit. It's like, this is serious. Like these kids are like a minute away from death, which is at the point where I was like, oh no, this is going to be a really abject film about what it means to live in Rio de Janeiro, which I imagine City of God was like, and how
Very much
hard
so.
life is, right? And it's there for a second. And it got kind of still sustains itself for a little bit, but then it changes. But the other piece, and tell me if I'm, I can go afield, so I don't want to go afield, Michael. Was this working for you?
Well, I mean, it showed the rules of
Is that
like
a no?
no, no, it does, because it shows me the rules of this space. Like Pedro, who's like kind of you realize after that incident, he's not just like a manager of the shops in the central station, because you get a sense that no, he's more of like a mob boss, right? In a
He
sense,
is.
like, and
And
he takes a fee from everybody. Like at the end of the first night, Dora pays a fee for having like set up her table in the central station. And at first you're like, oh, maybe he's just a shop manager and that's the daily, cost of being. But no, he's more of like, it's like a protection fee, if you will, you know.
and the thing on top of that, and so that's kind of explains the execution, but the thing on top of that is Dora, and this is when Dora starts to change, sees him talking um to the child.
Josué. Yeah, Josué. Yeah.
Sees him talking to the child, and she goes in and intervenes.
Right.
And she's like, and they have a conversation. And after that point, she takes Josué home.
Right. And this is the beginning of like this is in a sense like the beginning of what's about to be the search for family. And this idea of family and Josué finding family. He's searching for his father literally throughout the family. But he's searching for what's the image of family, because when he enters Dora's space and Irene comes down too, and she gets introduced to him, he's immediately struck by, it's like, so where are your husbands,
It's
right?
great.
Where's your family? No, no. And she's like, nope, no family, no husband, no dog, right? And he's like, that doesn't make any sense, because he's just like, why would you want to do that? And this is a very much because he's kind of the keeper of like the moral idea of what a family is, where Dora is like rejected that, and we're going to learn much more about the rationale for this as we get propelled through this real adventure, the road show that's about to start. As basically, you know, Dora takes Josué to an adoption agency. And we think it appears really nice.
Yeah.
There's immediately you're a little suspect. They're like, oh, we're going to find a lovely like European or American family to adopt you, and they'll be so wealthy. He's going to be better off, and you're going to be better off, Josué. And Doris like, yeah, cool. And Pedro Drow's there. He had greeted them, and she gets paid $1,000 for this. And you're like, uh-oh, that's not good.
And you realize why she took him home, and that conversation she had with the mob boss who's controls Central Station for her. But the other piece is you're still like, does she not know, or does she not want to know?
I
Right?
think it's more the latter,
Yeah, because they go to this place, which is like a really rundown tenement, right? This isn't an institutional. The woman comes to the door with this weird makeup and situation. Like it's
Yeah.
all so play acted and out of place. It just doesn't seem right. Even to you as a viewer, you're like, what is up?
Yeah. And so it's really difficult, because it's Irene who kind of like smacks her out of her like, dream of, oh, that was so easy. I got a new TV out of this. This is so great. And Irene's like basically she's like, what the fuck? They're like, organ traffickers. And she's like, no. It's like, yeah, you know this, and don't pretend. Which leads to this kind of it's almost like a piece of drama out of like a thriller. You know, she goes back to the apartment and she presents these photos that are from her drawer of letters that are in purgatory that are never to be sent, and pretending like, oh, I have more children I can offer you, and
Which
it's a
is
guise. And you're just like, it's a guise to get this woman Yolanda, who's the, you know, the face of this fake adoption agency, if you will. And she goes back to talk someone in the back, and she immediately just starts searching through the rooms looking for
Josué.
Josue, and Josue, she finds him and grabs him, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing? I don't trust you. Leave me alone." But she, not for the first time, grabs him and by the hide, and thankfully has the power to pull him out. And they run away, but they're immediately like, "We're gonna kill you. We're gonna murder you." And this is they reveal who they truly are, and they're forced to immediately kind of go on the road.
What's unclear to me at that point, how does she prevent them from coming out of the apartment to get her?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's surprising. I mean, I think that's just like, that's movie
But,
politics
like, it
for you,
almost seemed
Murder
like she
Story.
did something to the door. I just don't know what it was, right?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's. I mean, there's. I mean, I don't mind things not being explained. There's a lot of that in a good way to films that don't, they treat you. You know, it's like unexplained. You know, and you have questions about certain things, but this, in this sense, like, I forgive films that aren't going to go into. It's kind of like the MacGuffin of the Anna getting killed. It's like, we just need, it's a plot device, if you will, right?
Sure.
um and maybe it's a little awkward, you feel like, because these are men that just chased down like a teenager and shot him to death. Why are they suddenly not chasing down a 55-year-old woman retiree and a 13-year-old boy? You figure the same could easily happen and she'd be dead. And it's like, what was that? This is like a DS-106 assignment. you know Things that would end a film real fast, and everybody would come up with their idea of like, what could happen to change this movie, to change it. It's like, well, if they chased her down and shot her, the movie's over.
It's over.
It's kind of like,
And he's organ farmed out, so
yeah. And so, yeah, I think you just have to forgive it for the sake of the
Oh, yeah.
storytelling.
I just didn't know if I missed something simple.
No, I don't think it's real. I think it's just a matter of what's going for that. So
It doesn't
so
affect the story for me at all. I'm just
no,
wondering. I'm like, am I watching
no.
this wrong?
Yeah, because like there's, I think, really the thing that it's the setup of the letter writing and the setup of the stories to families undelivered, to transitioning to the setup of a woman who was failing to deliver these letters is now being compelled to deliver a child
Yeah.
instead. And
And
so that's the important part of it all. And like, in the world that wraps around it to make it happen seems a little awkward at a couple times, but ultimately the world is so compelling, and the trip is so inventive overall, that we buy in. And so the first part of the trip is they get bus tickets, because she's got $1,000 minus whatever she paid for the TV. So she's flush with cash. And so she feels compelled to do this. She communicates to Irene, and it's a really wonderful phone call, because she's calling Irene, and they do this like language to communicate, because Pedro is already at Irene's place, like looking for her. So
yeah,
these are some people you don't fuck around with.
exactly. You're a soldier? Oh, I'm so glad you did the right thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a great, great phone call.
And so they start off on the bus, and it's pretty awkward, because initially they're fighting in the bus station, and she's like, I don't want to do this. Get on the bus, go. And he's like, fine, I'll go by myself. But then she ultimately can't leave him alone. She feels compelled, for the first time, to be responsible for this story, right, of this boy, because
Yeah.
she's already rescued him from traffickers that she delivered him to, which is like crazy. And so they're on the bus together, and when she sits, it's kind of noted that he does not face her. He stays turned away from her. And but we get the beginnings of our first like revealing of personality, and it's again through Josue's like curiosity of what makes a family, because he looks back, in his seat, and he says, that guy back there, do you think he's a father? And she's like, that guy? And he's young and handsome. And it's like, that's his image of like, oh, my father will be young and handsome. and well, capable of himself. And it's like, no, it's more like this guy next to us who's like, more like slovenly and reading like a paper or something, and kind of cackling to himself. And she's like, he's a dad. And I bet he's wonderful at home. What does she say? But a prick. He's a
Freak
saint
out.
in the house, but a real prick outside. And then
Yeah.
she says, just like my father, basically, he was known in the town as the lecher, meaning he was someone who cheated on his wife a lot.
Yeah.
And then that leads to the metaphor about taxis and buses, and Josué is saying, like, I'd rather take the taxi. He's like, never take the taxi, take the bus. My father got sick of taking the bus and took a taxi. And this is this metaphor of him like cheating on his wife. And so this is the beginning of the real extensive search for father, of the idea of a father, not just his actual father.
And they're both searching for it. Like, so
Right.
that's what you start to
Mhm.
realize after this
Yes.
moment is it's just not him. She
Mhm.
lost her mom also at a similar age, she tells him, and that her dad kind of disappeared or was a
Mhm.
lech, and she had no one, right? So she's the orphan that she is now working with to journey back to the land of his father. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really cool setup because they don't give you much about her, and you pretty much hate her the first 20 minutes of this
Right.
film, 30 minutes, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And then she
We're
starts to come into her own so well.
Yeah, and we also, we get this continual tension of Josué's idea of what his father is versus what Dora is trying to tell him what reality is, right? He has this, it's like, no, no, no. My mother said he's a carpenter and he has his own business, and I'm gonna get to learn that trade, or actually I want to be a truck driver. But he's like, he's a good, hardworking man. And Dora's again and again is like, don't believe that. That's not true. This isn't the first letter your mother's written about him. He abused her. He's a drunkard. He's not someone you're going to see as responsible. And they just fight, and it's such a real fight. They're so mean to one another, and this happens again and again throughout the story. And this is part of this idea of what's going to be the beginning of, and it's not unlike what we think of like from Paper Moon and Ryan O'Neal and Tatum O'Neal, and this family that's through this propulsion of time together, right? Where they're forced to endure time together, and they inevitably become closer as a result of it.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
have these shared experiences of lost. They have no money, and they solve problems together and things like that. And it's so wonderful.
I mean, and you used it here. I don't want to forget you. And there's one of the things, one of the themes running through this movie that I think is super interesting is this theme of memory and this
Yeah.
ability of, and at some point, Dora says, like, I don't have the right or I don't have the ability to forget my father, and I want to, right? So this
Mm,
ability of not only being able to remember, like, will Joshua remember her when she's gone, or
mm,
does he remember his father? And that idea of that memory, like, going away, which is super compelling. But also, she says on the other side, like, I can't forget. Like
yeah.
sometimes I want to and I can't forget. And so there's this real struggle. And that can be obviously thought of and seen on the, you know, personal level. But I wonder how much of that is also on a national level. This idea of remembrance and forgetting, and like what Brazil has been through or what any country has been through, like when we memory hole parts of our experience that we don't want to remember. Italy is a great example of that with fascism in the 30s and 40s. You have that everywhere. There's a memory hole. We talked about that with Amarcord, and there's some real power around memory and forgetting. And this movie is one of the points where the characters seem to be moving out of their personal relationship, and you start to feel that the character of Brazil show its face, and not
Mm,
just in the landscape as they go on the road trip, which is true, but also around this constant return to this theme of remembrance and forgetting.
yeah. And it's the idea of, the woman who's lived through this in Dora. She's like, I want to forget, whereas the boy, and you're quoting a much later conversation they have, and it'll come back up, and that's what I named this episode is like, he's like, what are you talking about? I don't want to forget you. Like,
Yeah.
because at this later time in the story, he's like they have a real connection, and it builds through the experiences, and the experiences are like the MacGuffins of the plot of this thing is so great because she again at the one of the first stops, maybe it's the second stop they make, because the bus is picking up more people and dropping people off, and they're at these stations and there's stores, and where again he's confronted with this image of another family, a shopkeeper and his son, and he's just like munching away on something really delicious, and he has nothing to eat, and you know he's stuck with this woman who had yelled at him for finishing the cheap wine that she'd been drinking, and then he gets in this is great scene earlier in the bus before the stop where he's finished the wine and then the boy gets drunk and starts yelling at everybody in the bus, and she's forced to be the mother is like, oh my god, what did you do? It's so awesome. But they're at this first stop, and she tries to give money to the bus driver and says, like, make sure he gets to this town. I need to go back to Rio. I have to get back to my life. And he's like, I can't do that. um, and so, but she thinks she's pulled it off, and she actually leaves him money in his backpack by him. But as soon as the bus pulls off and she's still at the stop and she's bought a ticket back to Rio, there he is.
Yeah.
And this idea is like, it's like, no, you're not abandoning me, right? You can't do that. It's like and this is where it's also like Paper Moon in a sense of like, you now have an obligation to fulfill,
Yeah.
right? You promised to send this letter initially, but now you have this obligation. It's kind of like a vow, if you will. And for Addie and Mose, it's like, Addie, it's like, you owe me $200. You stole my money. And she uses that as a crutch to force the adult to be an adult, right? And this is again the kid forcing the adult to be an adult. And that's part of the story here is she doesn't want to be attached to anything. She's so disconnected, as you've alluded to. She has this poor image of family that she's endured and grown up and trying to forget, literally, right?
Yeah. And the interesting part there too is, as she's, as she's coming in there, he's still in the station, and she's like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And then she's like, "Where's your backpack?" So
Yeah.
then you learn as a plot device. Now they're broke, so
Yep.
they can't take the bus anymore. In fact, they can't even afford a meal. But at this point, as they're looking at some other customers' plantains, he lets them eat the plantains, and then he's a truck driver. His name is Caesar, and he's this cool guy who they get a ride with, and he's an evangelical Christian, and on his truck has these great, like,
Yeah.
power of God and all these kind of things. And like
Yeah.
for a moment there, he's a truck driver and they're kind of a family, right? There's
They're a
this
unit. Yeah.
forming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
And
really,
it's really,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, it's really cool because Joshua does the same interrogation like every time. It's like, so are you married? And Dora's like, what the fuck? You don't ask a man like that. You don't know him. And he's like, no, I'm married to the road. And Josue really insightfully sees like, oh, you're just like Dora. Like you don't have a life. It's like, what the fuck are you doing not having a family? That's so stupid, like in his
Yeah.
mind, you know? And yeah, and you're right. They share a night like sleeping on the side of the road. It's like very like much like a western, if you will. Like, oh, and there's this kind of flirtatious moment between Cesar and Dora, and you're like, oh, this seems so lovely.
Yeah.
But at the next stop, she pushes it too far too quickly, and it's in part because she, I think, is rejecting the unit because she pushes, they're having breakfast together and she pushes out Josue, say, go play foosball, right? It's like, get on the table soccer game. And she's like pushing herself on him and gets him a beer. And he's like, dude, I'm an evangelical. I don't drink. And she's like, he won't be watching right now. Have some. And he drinks it. And then it all falls apart instantly.
Yeah.
Right.
Then she grabs his hands.
Yeah.
He likes the beer or whatever. But then as she goes to put on some makeup and, go to the bathroom to clean up, she comes back and he's gone. And like
Yeah.
you could kind of see that coming. Like they kind of,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. It's
let you know that they basically gave you the inside. But it was depressing because you kind of wanted a break, right? You
Yeah.
kind of wanted you kind of wanted her to have a little happiness, to this kid have some stability. But also it's interesting because at the same time, like Caesar was a character much like them.
Yep.
He suffered from similar kind of trauma, as Antonella said, right?
Right.
We learn about the trauma of Dora and her dad and her losing her mom early. We know about the trauma of Josué and his mom and his dad. And then Caesar, who we don't necessarily know his family situation. We just know through the interactions with Dora and Josué that he's got his own trauma. And
Yeah.
it's all these people in this universe that are like struggling. And it's
Yeah.
real, and they're real people with real
Yeah.
struggles. And it was something magical about that scene as much as it was sad. You know what I mean?
It's sad because like he admits, in their little fireside chat, Dora and Cesar, like he's a transient. He doesn't want to be. He meets all these lovely people, but then he
Yeah.
continues on. But his true love is God. He basically, and she kind of pushes out, his love of God in a sense with the beer and the aggressive, ness of making a connection. And he's like, that I can't do that. I can't give up that. This is the
Yeah.
one thing that has been my stability for so long. Not unlike in a funny way, Dora's like letter writing is her stability and her feeling that she's above all these other people. And in my mind, I think that Cesar in that moment is feeling the same thing. It's like, oh, I'm above this situation. Like I am this, pure man of God, wanderer, meeting and doing good deeds, through life. But this, and that's tragic because like the reality of a real relationship is navigating being not on the same page all the time, and that's where Dora and Josue are navigating that because they fight. And there's this wonderful time where Josue at the same stop, he steals food because they have no
Oh my
food.
God. Yeah.
And it's so awesome. And then Dora's like, what the fuck? You can't steal food. These people like kill us. You never know what they're going to do. So she goes to, you think she's going to go return it, but instead she steals even more food, but better food like sausage and bread where he had just
If you're gonna
stolen
steal
candies. Yeah.
sausage.
and she brings it back to the truck and says, look what I bought. And he's like, you didn't buy that. You have no money. And the fight they had that proceeds, and she starts berating it like, oh, your father is still a drunkard, and he's like, you're just an ugly woman that looks like a man, and but then as soon as they stop fighting, what do? They just sit and eat.
Yeah.
And that's the best part about it. It's like they're navigating real fights that are necessary, and it makes me think of like, this is part of building a real relationship with someone. We used to, I mean, my wife and I have been together since like 96. We've been together a really, really long time. And you're learning to become adults together. And the fights are awful in the beginning as you're just trying to
Yeah.
figure one another out. And you can see how people fall out of love so easily out of these situations,
Sure.
and if you can navigate it, it's amazing because, the connections are built upon, wonderful times and hard times too. And this is showing what the foundations of real relationships look like, right? It's like, they find compatibility through their shared effort to try to find family. But in that context, there's a lot of cruel moments with they are to one another.
Yeah, and a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because as you get closer in this journey, and I love road trips, and again, Brazil
Yeah.
is a beautiful kind of, you're following it and you're seeing it, and it's almost like Apocalypse Now or some sort of Western, like they're traveling further and
Mm.
further up the river. And Brazil gets crazier and crazier as they go. Like there's no more cars, there's just horse-driven carriages, and everyone's dressed in white, and there are
Mm.
these like intense Christian, almost syncretic Christian pilgrimages, and it's just
Yeah.
like things, and the people are from all colors and all creeds, and it just is a very different space than where
Mm.
we started in Rio. And I love the way like you're kind of traveling through time almost back to the 19th century. There's a real sense of movement across that. But there is also this final destination where they find a family, right? And
Well,
you don't think they're gonna.
no, there's two. Well, there's two destinations remaining. Ultimately, there's they join like a pilgrimage, basically. The next, way that they continue to his father's town is by getting on the back of a open air, truck, that's filled with pilgrims heading to this big, religious event. It happens to be in the same town that they're going to, and she trades her watch for further tickets to get on the back of the bus, and it's really interesting because he immediately connects with the pilgrims. They're singing a song that he's been taught by his mother, and Dora seems much more on an island in her like kind of solitary existence that he's been leading, and he connects, and this is his like he's kind of this moral center of like, I understand family, you don't, you dumb woman. Like, throughout, like, why don't you get this? And he whispers to her, it's like, this I know this song from my mother, and it's like, these are connections, these are the stories that we tell one another about our films, our own children. And this is another one that's like, we have these stories that we tell my own children, like, so that they remember moments they can't remember. One of our favorite ones we always tell is like when my son first met neighbors when we had bought this house in Brooklyn. And Amanda was so excited. Oh, he's meeting the neighbors, and it's like, look, there's other kids in nearby, and they introduce him, and one of the kids looks at Wyatt and says to Amanda, says, "Why is he not wearing pants?" And Amanda's thinking, oh my God, I fucked up his first introduction to the neighbors. And instead, Wyatt, being the precocious kid he says, is like, well, sometimes you wear pants, sometimes you don't. And it's just, and it's this amazing story that of course he can't remember, but we have to make him remember it. And this is the idea, is Josué gets this. You tell the story because that's how you remember the people you love, and they know the stories of their own life. It's not just photographs. And that's a big part of this too, is the idea of photos and letters and memory. It's like these people are telling these stories to Dora so that they can just simply be remembered. It's not about whether it's truth or not. It's like, and she's so terrible in the beginning. She's like, those memories are dumb. Those don't count. These other ones do. And he's trying to tell her, like, they all count. They all matter. Right.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's so done. That's done so well. And there's also the question around the infrastructure of religion, and
Yeah.
how religion offers another kind of infrastructure out on the, territory, or right out there. You can kind of see it. And I really love that piece of it too. But he does go to where he thinks his dad lives, right?
Yep, he
And
does. And
this is
they
another,
make it there, and he
yeah,
runs off, and he's so excited, and they run into this woman, and she already has children, and they're the same age as Josué, and Josué starts to eyeball him, and the kid eyeballs her, but the wife is like, what are you doing here wanting to talk to my husband with this little boy?
yeah,
And we're immediately, and then the husband shows up, and he's like, what do you need to talk to me in private without my wife and my kids? And he's like,
yeah,
what the fuck did I do? And it's like, I'm trying
yeah.
to, he's like, you get the sense like he's racking through his
I
brain, like,
love that.
yeah.
He's like, this maybe could be my kid. I don't know.
Right. Because all men are drunkards and they all cheat, and
Yeah,
that's fits Dora's image. But then the best thing is, it's like literally almost comedy. She pulls out the letter that she wrote to him, and it's addressed to Jesus, and he's like, no, I'm Jesse, not Jesus.
yeah, exactly. Jesus, went to the new kind of, I think they called settlement.
Yeah.
He won a house. He went there, and then he
Yeah.
warns her, but unfortunately, he drank it all away.
Right.
And so you start to see that maybe Dora's vision of the father is right, and it
Yeah.
gets a little sad.
Right. And then at the same time, Irene, her friend back in Rio, has sent money to the wrong town. And sort of there's no money. And so Dora, what does she do? She takes it out on Josue, and she says, like, it's literally, now it's, blaming him for being born, causing their plight. And now it's up to me to put up with you. You're a curse. You're a curse. And he runs off.
Yeah, it's a
And so Dora has still not, she has not completely changed her stripes yet, and Josue is still being the being punished for her, like, being forced to be a caretaker, if you will. And and that's a really important part of this, is like her being a caretaker isn't this, beautiful evolution of a change in a woman, like a very American story would be, and like the relationship, and you could hear the swelling music as they make this connection and whatnot. She's withering throughout for the most part, trying to again and again teach, Josue, it's like, your father's a drunk. He's not real. And Josue was like, fuck you. He's a carpenter, and she's like, no, fuck you. He's a drunk, and it's really nasty throughout.
On top of that, this all happens during the pilgrimage's, apotheosis,
Festival.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. It's like a big festival.
and they have the final fireworks, and they're searching for each other, and she, in some ways, she has this kind of collapse in the church, and at the same time they have this fireworks that reveal Madonna and child.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, obviously she is kind of the virgin mother of this Josué, and that's kind of sealed with the image you have behind us as she wakes up. So as she wakes up, she's
and we can show
sleeping
that
on, essentially Josué's lap, and they've come back together. And this was probably their most brutal fight yet. But to your point, it's having come back after that and knowing that they're in it together, that it seems like the two have been sealed at this point. Like their relationship is sealed, right? Whether mother or son or however you want to do that, spiritually or otherwise, like they have made it through, what seems to be the height of their kind of a struggle. And at this point, they're going on to the next settlement to see if they can find their father, because hope springs eternal in Central.
Yes, well, no, hope springs a hustle.
Oh, I forgot the hustle. The hustle's great.
Yeah, because it's like again, it's like Paper Moon. It's like, hey, I've got an idea. I can do these hustles better than you. Like, and he sees this man who takes photographs of festivals and of pilgrims that they can give them as a memory, a keepsake, but they want, like, can you write the story and write that goes with the photo? And he's like, no, I can't write. And Josue hears this, and he immediately puts forward Dora to do this job, and they make like tons and tons of money off of like basically doing what she does very well. It's just like taking the stories, but the stories change now. The memories are not so dissimilar from the ones told in the station, but the reaction is different. Dora is like hearing them more attentively, like and buying into the hopefulness of reconnecting with a loved one, or telling the story of like, I'm still looking, to find you, and ultimately before they
the stories of the pilgrims.
Exactly.
So all these pilgrims are coming, and they're telling their stories in some ways of salvation.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And so she, instead of just dumping them, and what's so interesting is they have money now, and they go and get their photo taken at the booth right next to them, and they actually get a hotel together, and there's this real wonderful, charming scene as they share a bed that night, and Josue is talking about like his like sexual prowess, and she's like, oh ho, ho.
I have quite a man in my bed. But you know what? I hadn't even made the connection, and the connection is like right there slapping me in the face. Paper Moon has exactly these scenes. They get their picture in front of the Paper Moon. They get the hotel after. It's the hustle. You're right. It's almost.
I put that together.
You did. Brilliant. And it's, you know what? It's hard to unsee it now. It's like, how
it really is.
Maybe not. Yep. And he went to USC's film school in the 70s and 80s, or who knows, maybe later. So he must have had some exposure.
He must have watched Peter Bogdanovich films. Like, there's no way he didn't, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think it's heavily inspired by the Addie Mose story, and, and just even still, like this idea of transitioning from like seeing the child as a burden / financial opportunity, right? Because she gets the $1,000 for Josue, Mose gets the $200 for Addie in the Depression era time, but both of them force them to become adults and be responsible for
I love it.
Their sins. Yeah,
that's an essay if it hasn't been written yet. So, bingo, MBS, bingo. I'll take credit. I'll put my name on it, but it's your right.
Good. And so they do have their moment, and you're actually kind of, for the first time, excited for their relationship, honestly, right, between Dora and Josue, and they've accomplished something positive together, right? Not unlike Mose and Addie and their way, the working the widow's Bible to like the nth level, right? And Mose is like, it's starting to teach her the trade of all these other, cons, and she's performing them so well and stealing money from others, which is kind of awesome. And But they do continue, and because they did learn from Jesse where Jesus might be, and it is this final destination, which is this kind of like settlement, which is like weird, weirdly repetitive row houses, if you will, that are like tin roofs and like adobe styled like bricks and something that are just, and there's nothing more to them, but there's thousands of them practically, right?
Oh
It's
my
like
God,
this
it's wild.
weird suburban like Brazilian landscape.
Yeah, like nothing you ever seen. And then they go to the father's, what they think is the father's house. They
Right.
get there. And do
And
you
y
want to say something before I go
yeah,
here?
well,
Oh,
no,
damn
you
it.
go ahead.
No, no,
No, no.
say it. God damn it, say it, MBS.
Well, it's the third mirror of like what Josue wants in a family. He sees yet another man with yet another boy, and yet again, it's not his father. Sorry, you continue. Finish your drink.
That's where he was going,
Yeah,
right? To the house.
but he's not there, and
He's
yet
not
again,
there.
just
He's not
no.
there. No, he's not there. And the boy comes and follows them as they're going back forlorn to the station to learn that they could only leave tomorrow because there's no more buses today.
Yeah,
And the kid, who's the son of the father, who's not Joshua's father, says something to a guy up on the roof who's fixing the roof. And these two characters are probably two of my favorite characters in the movie. And you
yeah.
learn slowly that this carpenter is which one is it? It's not Mose. It's
No,
the other
it's yes, it's Isaias.
Isaias, right?
Yeah,
And so it's his brother, and he starts joking with him. And you learn that, oh, you heard in the letter before when she was writing, the Joshua's mother was like, I hope to see Isaias and Moses. And so
right.
when you realize that this is
Yeah,
one of the two, at first you're like, oh no, they're going to take advantage of him or
right.
something bad's going to happen. You start to worry, right? When he's like,
Mhm.
come back to our house, right? Come back. And you start to get a little nervous. But the more and more he starts talking and joking, and he's got this great face and he's got this great personality, you're like, oh, wait, maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
And he shows their house, which includes a carpentry shop that he's built with his brother Moises. And then, what's also striking is when they walk into the house, there's the portrait of Anna and his father
Yeah. And he
on the
sees it.
wall, and it literally startles Josue, right? Because then he realizes, like, holy shit, this is my family, right?
Yeah.
These are my brothers, my half brothers. I don't know, because and it's true. I didn't put it together originally. It's like, because Anna in the second letter had written those, and I can see Moises and Isaias,
Yeah.
and you're like, holy shit, they are family, right? And and what happens is there happens to be another letter, like they're carrying the letter from Anna to the father, and the boys are carrying a letter from their father to Anna, and they can't read it, right?
Yeah. They're illiterate, which is
Yeah,
a constant, you're like, wow. And then
yeah.
they ask Dora to read it, who does read it.
And what's so wonderful is basically we learn the final like bit of the story is that through a combination of the two boys and the reading of the letter, that he in fact hadn't gone off into the wilderness as the previous father, the previous man had suggested, not Jesse, the other one, in the kind of like suburban place just around the corner. um, he had gone back to Rio searching for Anna and his son.
Yeah.
And yes, he had been a bit of a failure as a father because Anna had left 2 years earlier pregnant, apparently. and he had waited it out expecting her to return. So they're kind of like at cross paths in their lives, we're learning now, the mother and the father, and they're both missing now. And I think um Isai says holds on to this idea of him as trying to return. And Moises is, I think, much more
Yeah.
reticent about that idea. um and then Josue is told through Dora that he's in the letter, like he's looking for, excited to meet him, right? To meet Josue. But Josue, being Josue, knows that even though he's has an affection for Dora now, that she could be lying. Like
Yeah.
she could have invented that sentence, that paragraph. She could have wholesale invented the entire letter. We don't know and never will know. And it's important because back to this, we talked about this idea of the image of their fathers, because right as they're walking to the house, and I think it's the house that's not the brothers, it's the other house, and she's saying, like, she asks Josue, do you remember what your fathers look like? Did your mother ever show you a photo of him? And he's like, yes, but it's really fuzzy. And it's like, me too, but I wish I could forget, right? And we
Yeah.
talked about this desire. She wants to forget his past, where he's like saying, no, I don't want to forget. And now Josue is confronted with, it is real, and he doesn't know if it's true.
Yeah. Exactly. But he does know it's true in that he's got his two brothers and he's nestled between them. And he has found a family. And he, like Isaiah, is going to hold out hope,
Right.
right? Because what's better than truth is hope. And this
Hmm.
hope that, he will come back. And there
Right.
is possibility. And now that he has a family to kind of build those stories of hope around and possibility, everything changes, right? I think the question really is, are you alone in
Hmm.
despair, or are you together in hope? And I think
Yeah.
this family now is together in hope. And it kind of allows for Dora to leave, which she does, which is still kind of the part of the ending of this movie that is hard to fully wrap my head around. Like, you feel like maybe she has found some solace in Josué. There's obviously a lot of love there. And, there's no reason why she's looking for a new beginning beyond Rio. She couldn't stay there and work with them potentially. But
Hmm.
that's not in the cards. She leaves and she
No.
gets on the bus and she writes him a letter that you're wondering how he'll ever read
Right.
about
I'm wondering
her,
that too. Yeah.
about her emotions and
Hmm.
about like her having to kind of leave so that he can live his family with his brothers and find really what it is he needs and wants. But it leaves, unfortunately, still a hole in her story and her sense of connection. Of course, where he may have found it, she also did, but then left it. And
Yeah,
there's
but
this
she's
kind of this, I don't know, there's this hole in there, for me at least.
there is. I mean, to push back, like she describes in this letter, like a desire to remember her father as well, at least the good things. Like, and she speaks of remember. I can't remember what it is,
She
but
says
she
she
speaks.
wants to remember him. Like she
No,
does
no,
say
but
ultimately.
yeah, rather than all of the negative side, like, and it what speaks to is like that he was great at home and like a shark outside, right? And so like she's choosing for once to remember the in-home positive things about her father. And so I think that's what we're left with. But this is a like, yeah, what's the next day kind of happens to Dora? She go back to Rio and get murdered by the mob boss, basically, like what's going to happen to her? I mean, she can't, she doesn't feel she can stay. And, we've already talked about like this idea of like, she's abandoning, you know, um, Josue yet again, but this time it's not for selfish reasons. She believes she's doing the right thing, but it's
Yeah,
really painful. Like,
it is.
where Paper Moon, rewards the found family and keeps it together. And Central Station, the found family is real, but it's trying to show us like how much it hurts for them to separate, because Josue does see that she's left and literally tries to chase after her and make
Yeah.
her stay, and she probably would have stayed if he had caught her, right?
Yeah, you get that sense, right?
Right.
But it wasn't in the cards, or it wasn't meant to be. I don't know. That definitely, that ending lingers for me.
Yeah.
It kind of feels, it feels like where you have this hopeful ending, you also have, the concomitant, this fracturing that we started with at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of going full circling back to this fractured Rio and this woman who's kind of unanchored a little bit from anything in the world. And
Mhm.
I don't know, it's a hard one. You're right. You can definitely push back on that reading, but it's just, a decision they made, and I'd love to know what Salas was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good place, I think, to end it, Jim Groom. We got another one. 73 is done, and we have one more in this series that's been, as you've already said, so fruitful, and I can't wait to do it.